3 squad cars were parked across my gate like I was some kind of fugitive. And standing behind them, practically glowing in the red and blue lights, was Karen Whitmore with that smug little smile people wear when they think they've finally won. I had just hauled my horse trailer 6 hours across Texas to get home, dust all over the truck, diesel humming Sunset bleeding orange across the pasture, and this woman who'd lived next door for all of 3 months had called the cops to report me for trespassing on my own family ranch. One deputy walked up, slow hat in hand, already looking tired of the whole thing. "Sir," he said, glancing back at Karen, "we got a complaint that you don't belong on this property." I looked past him at the iron sign bolted to the stone entrance. White Hawk Ranch, established 1887, then over at Karen, arms crossed, chin up, bouncing on her toes like a kid at Christmas. Somewhere out in the back pasture, cattle were lowing. Sagebrush moved in the evening breeze. The whole place smelled like dust, warm cedar, and the kind of land that's been in one family long enough to have memory. I leaned out the truck window and said, calm as could be, "Deputy, meet the woman who just called law enforcement on the man whose day job is investigating crooked HOAs." And just like that, Karen's smile cracked. Now, to understand why that moment felt so good, I gotta back up a little. My name's Garrett Whitehawk, and 4 months before that, I buried my father on that same Texas soil, the same soil his grandfather broke with a plow back in 1887. White Hawk Ranch wasn't just land. It was blood, sweat, droughts, births, funerals, bad years, miracle years, and more sunrises than a man could count. 2,400 acres of rolling pasture, mesquite creek beds, cattle roads, and fence lines. My family knew better than most folks know their own children. After Dad passed, I got called to Washington, D.C. for a promotion I'd worked toward for years. Regional Oversight Director with the federal housing side of government, the job basically being this: I made sure HOAs and residential developments followed the law instead of making it up as they went. Funny little twist of fate, I know. I leave Texas to learn how to untangle HOA abuse, and while I'm gone, one moves right up beside my ranch wearing designer sunglasses and a superiority complex. That's where Karen came in. She had just moved into a brand new subdivision called Sagebrush Estates, one of those polished, authentic Western living communities built for people who want cowboy scenery without any actual cowboys in it. Nice entry sign, fake rustic mailboxes, matching roofs, and residents paying premium prices to live beside open ranch land, until the ranch land started acting like a ranch. Buck Henley, my foreman, started calling me within the first week. "Boss," he said over a crackly line one night, "this woman's out by the fence again with a clipboard." "What's she doing?" "She appears to be documenting cow behavior." I thought he was joking. He was not joking. Karen drove by twice a day with a measuring tape, a notebook, and the focused energy of a caffeinated chihuahua. She photographed our cattle through the fence slats, measured dust in the air, logged feeding times, and filed county complaints about everything from manure smell to equipment visibility to agricultural noise, which in this case meant cows mooing and trailers rattling over a cattle road that had existed longer than her entire subdivision's architectural style. Then the certified letters started piling up. Excessive odor, unsightly machinery, livestock disturbance, road access concerns, property value threats. Buck said her favorite phrase was community standards, which is suburban code for "I don't like reality, and I'd like government to fix it." The first time I met Karen in person was at Kowalski's feed store. You know, the kind of place, grain dust in the air, leather oil boots squeaking on old concrete radio humming low in the corner. I was grabbing mineral and tax supplies when she cornered me near the horse supplements, smiling like we were at a fundraiser instead of a feed store. "You must be Mr. Whitehawk," she said, extending a hand. I shook it once. "I'm Karen Whitmore, Community Standards Advocate for Sagebrush Estates. We really need to discuss modernizing your operation to fit the neighborhood aesthetic." I actually blinked at her, not because I didn't hear her, because I wanted to make sure my brain hadn't misfired. "Ma'am, I said this ranch has been here since before your neighborhood was a sketch on a developer's napkin." She gave me that tight little smile people use when they think they're being gracious while insulting you. "Oh, I understand the history," she said. "But times change and property values matter. People expect a certain standard." That was the moment I understood something important about Karen. She wasn't confused, and she wasn't curious. She had already decided she was in charge. She never asked what the land meant, never asked what rights protected it, never asked whether we might know a thing or two about living here. She saw an old ranch and thought, that should move for me. Well, no. The county scheduled what they called a compatibility hearing, which already sounded stupid to me, because there's nothing to debate when a century-old ranch gets blamed for existing before a subdivision. But Karen came loaded for war. She built herself a little committee, Bryce, a penny-counting retired banker, and Donna, a former city councilwoman who'd apparently moved to Texas to escape the kind of bureaucracy she used to create. Buck's cameras caught them arriving at Karen's house with folders, charts, even a projector. She wasn't just complaining anymore, she was campaigning. What Karen didn't know was that while she was building binders, I was building a case. My attorney, Sarah Olivia, started digging through title records and development permits. Marcus Webb, over at County Planning, old friend of my dad's, started reviewing the original subdivision files. And the deeper we looked, the prettier the picture got. First off, White Hawk Ranch was protected by agricultural easements, older than most modern zoning fights. In plain English, that means you do not get to move next to a working ranch and then act shocked that ranch things happen there. The law is pretty clear on that, and the more Karen documented our operations, the more she was actually proving we'd been doing the same lawful work all along. But then Sarah found the twist, and buddy, it was a good one. Sagebrush Estates had been approved with conditions: a required 200-foot agricultural buffer, drainage protections, environmental mitigation, worked the whole deal. The developer was supposed to install it, pay for it, and finish compliance before the neighborhood fully filled in. They never did. Developer went bankrupt, left the job half-finished, and under Texas law, those obligations rolled right downhill to the HOA. Karen had spent months trying to prove our ranch was the problem, when in reality, her subdivision had been built out of compliance from day one. And it got even better. Her own house sat about 50 feet from our line. It was never supposed to be that close. So now the woman harassing us over setbacks and compatibility was standing in a home that shouldn't have been placed where it was in the first place. That alone was enough to make me laugh into my coffee. But life in its infinite generosity handed me one more surprise. One evening, Buck called and said, "You're going to want to hear this." Karen and her husband Dave had been screaming in their kitchen with the windows open, and Buck's security cameras picked up enough audio to make the whole thing clear. Dave finally snapped. Turns out they weren't thriving transplants building a dream life, they were drowning. Back taxes, old judgments, legal settlements from California, money problems buried under granite countertops and fresh paint. Dave was begging her to stop, said they couldn't survive falling property values or a special assessment. That changed the whole flavor of it for me. Because suddenly Karen wasn't just a bully, she was a desperate one. Still wrong, still dangerous, still mean as a snake in church. But desperate. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that desperation mixed with entitlement makes people do some truly stupid things. She doubled down, called the vet board on us, called tax agencies, tried to bribe one of our seasonal workers for dirt, started following supply trucks, took photos through windows, filed police reports over dogs that were fenced half a pasture away. Then she went to the media pitching herself as some brave homeowner fighting corrupt government power. Problem was, the reporter actually did his homework. Jake Morrison started asking questions, pulled public records, talked to former neighbors in California, and suddenly Karen's big expose flipped clean over. Instead of evil rancher terrorizes subdivision, the story became serial complainer targets. Historic ranch while her own HOA faces compliance disaster. The community meeting she organized turned into her funeral. She had her slideshow, dramatic music, red circles on photos, noise charts, dust readings, all of it. I showed up in boots and a pressed work shirt, stood in the back, and answered every claim one by one, calmly. No theatrics. When she claimed our cattle created excessive noise pollution, I held up her own readings and said, "Mrs. Whitmore, according to your data, my cows are quieter than your neighbor's leaf blower." That room got real quiet, then real unfriendly toward her. Residents started asking about the missing buffer zone, the environmental obligations, the legal exposure, the cost. Bryce folded first. Donna backed away next. By the end of the week, people weren't asking how to fight my ranch. They were asking how much Karen's crusade was about to cost them. Answer: a lot. County enforcement kicked in. The HOA got hit with compliance orders. The special assessment landed around $12,500 per household. Insurance got shaky. Houses started going up for sale. Property values, the thing Karen claimed to worship, dropped like a rock tied to a coyote. And still, she kept going. That's the thing about pride. Once some folks build their whole identity around being right, they'd rather burn everything down than admit they were wrong. Sarah filed for a restraining order after Karen crossed from nuisance into stalking. We had footage reports, witnesses, dates, timelines, enough paper to choke a courthouse copier. Judge Williams didn't need long. Temporary order first, then permanent. She was told to stay away from the ranch, from me, from our roads, from our business. And then, because karma has a sense of humor, Karen violated it. She came at me outside the courthouse screaming that I'd destroyed her life, that I'd weaponized government, that innocent homeowners were victims. Deputies stepped in before I said a word. The same woman who'd once tried to have me arrested for trespassing on my own land got handcuffed on courthouse steps for violating a protective order. Her mugshot ran in the county paper the same week White Hawk Ranch got heritage recognition. You tell me God doesn't write comedy. A little later, when I testified about HOA abuse and development failures, I used Sagebrush as the perfect example of what happens when arrogance, bad planning, and fake authority all get dressed up as community standards. But honestly, the lesson that stayed with me wasn't legal, it was human. A lot of people don't actually want harmony. They want control. They say fairness when they mean obedience, they say standards when they mean power, and they say community when they really mean do what I want so I can stay comfortable. And the dangerous part is, if nobody pushes back, they start believing that's normal. 6 months later, the ranch was stronger than ever. School groups came through. Heritage tourism picked up. Buck finally got the title and pay he deserved. The new HOA board apologized, and to their credit, started acting like neighbors instead of hall monitors. Karen lost her house, her marriage, her standing, and eventually took a plea rather than drag the stalking case through trial. Meanwhile, every morning, the sun still came up over White Hawk Ranch, the same way it always had, slow and gold across the pasture, cattle drifting through the grass, wind bending the sage another day on land that outlasted one more fool who thought she could bully history into moving. And sometimes standing on that porch where my father once stood, and his father before him, I think the real victory wasn't just beating Karen. It was refusing to become her. Because revenge is easy, steady is hard. Letting truth do the work, that takes patience. Still, I won't lie to you, watching her get arrested after all that talk about law and order felt pretty damn satisfying. So here's what I wanted to know. If somebody moved next to your way of life, signed the papers, ignored the warnings, then tried to use rules and pressure to force you out, would you call that justice when they got exactly what they earned? Or would you say karma went too far? Tell me where you stand. Tell me what's right and what's not. And if you've ever dealt with a neighbor, an HOA, or some self-appointed king or queen of the block, I want to hear that story too.